Welcome to the Node.js Node add-on team meeting for October 4th, 2024. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at what we have in the team project board. Before we get started on that, though, any announcements that anybody has to share? No? Okay, so let's bring that up. Here we go. Should be there. Start on the right-hand side, I guess, in terms of have PR. Anything on these two that we should discuss?
Well, the first one is still being worked on. The PR is there are still some failures. The last time I checked on the PR.
Okay. Moving ahead though. Looking then in terms of in progress. Anything on these that we'd like to discuss this week?
I didn't do much progress on the sleep note this week. So like,
Okay,
let's leave it for next week.
sounds good. In terms of the to-dos, anything that people want to mention in terms of the to-dos?
I think it's still in the new charge column, I guess. The new fix for the Node add-on API linking change.
Okay, so so nothing on those ones. That's obviously top of mind. Let's see, is that it's a PR or is it a
It's a PR, and also there's an issue, right?
right?
The issue is
It's the fourth from the bottom, I think, is the issue.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, right. Yeah, that one. Okay, so I know there's definitely been some discussion in the issue itself. I see. Okay, so you actually, maybe I didn't see your PR before commenting there. So,
I probably can answer your question on the issue that can we test this undefined types in Node add-on API? I think the lucky thing is that we have the Node API headers package that snapshots every version of Node API headers so that we can reliably install the Node API headers package and build Node add-on APIs against it. In that way, we don't have to build a Node add-on API with every Node.js version because that's a lot of more versions to test. And we can just test Node add-on API with Node API headers package, which has scarcely versions than Node.js versions. Like in this case, we only have 1.1.0 and 1.2 and 1.3. Probably we can add 1.0, but I think, well, 1.1 is the last version that we have that don't have Node GC defined. So I think that's a good starting version to test with. So with this new CLI workflow, we can verify that we won't add breaking change we won't add change, probably not breaking change, because that relies on new types that was not available in previous Node API versions. Previous Node API headers.
Yeah. So I think I understand how that will let us test. But then is this PR actually then like just how does it fix the problem as well? Because like I don't think that fixes what somebody else is building. They may have whatever headers, right? They're going to have the headers that came with the version of Node that they worked with.
Yeah. I mean, they might compile a add-on with Node add-on API with older node.js versions that in the middle, like we had node.js version of 22.0.0, and we are always building Node add-on API with the latest Node.js version 22, which is likely 22.9.0 that has newer Node API changes. They, I mean, it is while testing runtime behaviors, I think it's good to always test with the latest Node.js version because that might contains bug fixes or behavior changes. But regarding the new types, I think it's sufficient to just test with Node API headers because it's just headers. We don't introduce any new
Uh,
runtime types.
I think to answer Michael's question is that there is a fix in this PR and it's
Right.
in napi.h.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And in the actual, not in the inline, but in napi.h, there's a
All right. Okay. Right.
for this has post finalizer. And this is because that there was no type guard for that type for the node basic for the
Right.
Node.js
Okay.
type.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's like the closest that we have. So it's a guard like that. And then we define our own type here, node add-on API, basic env. That's either going to be the Node.js env if it's there, or whatever the
Okay.
regular env.
So that's exactly what I was thinking is like we just say if it's here, great, we use it. If not, we define it as something that works. And it's okay. So yeah, okay. So that answers it was like, yep, we fixed it through doing that. And then actually this goes a step further, which says like, oh, and let's increase our testing so that like we're gonna catch something like this sooner, which is great.
And then,
Yeah.
and then looking at the binding zip file, it has this new option for use node API headers, which I guess then the end user could also use if they wanted to. But by default, it would use the headers that are provided in the system.
Yeah.
And then the testing that is added in the workflow uses this new option. That's my understanding, right?
Yeah, it depends to the input DIRs list because Node.js by default also include node headers. So we have to use node API headers first.
Right.
Mm.
So basically like this, like, but if they chose to use the Node API headers, they have to figure out how to get it downloaded versus like Node.js handles getting all the headers and stuff like that, right?
I think, yeah,
Right? Like, because the rest of the infrastructure, it's going to get you some level of headers, probably the one tied to Node. But if you want to get them yourself and for testing, yeah, this definitely is a good addition.
Yeah, if you look at the CI YAML file, it's line 52 that I'm seeing.
Which is it in this PR or is
And
it
the Node
no?
API headers YAML file, the
Yep.
first file changed.
Oh, sorry. So it is in there. Right. Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Line 52 is where it's basically installing the specific
Mhm.
header based
Right.
off
Yeah.
of
Okay.
Right. So this is what the end user would have to do if they want to use the Node API headers. If they don't want to use the headers, then this just does everything by default, which uses the Node JIP's installation from wherever
Right.
it has decided.
I'm guessing you could just put that in like the Node API headers into your package JSON and it should work as well.
I would assume so as well. And then
Yeah.
you could just
But that would
have,
be the normal flow, right? Like I've just got like it's an extra dependency. Then that
Yeah,
will actually install it as you install all the rest of the pieces. And then, yeah, that's actually quite a nice story there.
I'm curious though, if you do install Node API headers, right? Then how do you tell Node JIP to not use the system headers?
you cannot. It will be by default, and you cannot disable it. So we have to append the list instead of append the list. That's why I have to use a less known syntax or how to append to the include. Yeah, like the
Oh, yeah, the
you would
plus.
notice the plus. Yeah,
Yeah,
plus
okay.
notation. Yeah.
so it gets picked up because it's preferential in order. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing you potentially could do is get a mismatch, right? Like you could set a newer set of headers that uses, like that exposes things that aren't actually in the versions of Node that you want to support. So you can,
Well,
like, not saying that's a bad thing, like that's not a deal breaker, but it does add some places where you could say like, well, okay, I built something that I didn't actually have, but you probably, hey, good chance that your testing would find that.
The NAPI version preprocessor directive should cover you, right? Because you're not targeting versions of Node, you're targeting versions of NAPI. And so if you define it very
Yeah, okay.
high, then that automatically limits you in some cases,
Right,
right?
right. Okay, I don't know. That makes sense. Exactly. You set your Node API version to like a lower one and you're still good. So, okay.
I think the another thing that I would like to bring up is the issue that I found with testing the API. It's another issue I submitted regarding the Node API headers repo.
Okay. So I'm going to move this one into in progress, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely
Mm.
there. This one too. And then is it another one that is here that
It's a last second.
this one?
With the
Or
one
this?
above. Yeah.
Okay.
I think this one is quite tricky because when we synchronize the headers between the repository, we strip down the experimental definitions, so we
Yep.
don't expose experimental functions in a Node API headers package. But the problem is that there are some, well, there are some types that are experimental, but they have definition conditions that can be changed if Node API experimental is present, and we cannot strip it down, or we can strip down part of the conditions, the experimental condition branch, or else if the MPI experimental is defined, the Node API headers package will complain about the packages will not complain. The complaint will come from users because the complementary API to use together with the Node.js finalizer, which is the Node API post finalizer, will be missing from the package. So if someone is using API experimental with Node API headers package, they will have to involve with the Node API Node.js finalize, but they don't have the Node API post finalizer in together to defer the JavaScript finalization.
Oh,
So
I think, okay.
they are not allowed to code JavaScript in the finalizer because the Node API Node.js finalize is there,
Yeah.
but they don't have the
I think
ability to post finalize.
Right. I think from the core headers, correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I should have done maybe when I did this was to also like number define an API number define node API post finalizer and API add finalizer, right? Because then just as the two environments behave identically, so too do the two functions, right? Because if node API node GCN is just defined as an API env, then the post finalizer should also just be defined as add finalizer, right? Because there is no difference in the types, and there should be no difference in the way you attach the finalizer either. So now it's missing, right? Although I don't remember if the signature is the same. It better be the same, because otherwise you can't do this.
Well, I'm not sure if we are referring to the same problem. What I'm saying is that the package will strip the Node API post finalizer definition. So this function is not present in Node API headers
Yes.
package.
Right. What I'm saying is instead of stripping it, it should define, it should alias Node API post finalizer to an API add finalizer, because it aliases the Node API Node GC env type to an API env type. It does that. It aliases the type, but it doesn't alias the function call, right? And so the aliasing is incomplete, right? So ideally, like you would in a compilation situation where you're not ready to support real Node.js finalization, but you want your code to look like it's doing post finalizer, et cetera, you should be able to do that, right? And then you have this guard that says Node GCN opt-out, right? You have the guard turned on, but if you do, you should still be able to say Node API post finalizer, and you should still be able to use the type Node API Node GCN, and you can use the type, but you can't use the API call, right? And so that's why I'm saying if we aliased the API call, then sort of the illusion would be perfect. You can say you can use the type, you can use the API call, but the code that the binary that actually gets generated doesn't use any of that. It's just an API add finalizer and regular an API end, and so sort of the illusion would be complete. But when I wrote the PR, I left out part of the illusion, is what I'm saying, and I think that's a fact.
The experimental, like the Node API post finalizer method existing was part of the experimental part, right? So that shouldn't even exist if you don't have the experimental stuff, like it shouldn't exist. So we kept it out of the headers because, like, for example, while it's experimental, we could remove it or we could do whatever. So like I think it's that you shouldn't be defining NAPI experimental if you're using the headers from.
Yeah, I mean, that's an ideal case. I raised this because I was testing against the Node add-on API where we define API experimental, and I came across this issue because the Node.js finalize is present, but Node API post finalizer is not. Where in real case, when we compare against the original node headers, this problem will not present.
Right. So
But
there is
maybe
an
Node API and Node
issue.
GC finalized shouldn't be present.
Right. It should not
They
be
should
present.
be together.
I think it's an issue with because it's a custom script that is stripping out the experimental stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't strip it all out. It just, well, I mean, it's kind of, it'll be kind of tricky to the script.
Because basically it just shouldn't be there. Okay. But now, yeah, so it shouldn't be there because experimental stuff shouldn't be in these headers because people shouldn't use Node API headers if they're using an experimental build. Okay.
Right,
I
so
wrote
it's that
that
we
stripping
somehow missed,
script. Yeah,
like in the headers, that shouldn't exist at
it's
all.
probably because the stripping script
Sure,
does not handle such a complex
yep,
Yeah.
condition. So, but I wrote that script, so I can take a look into that um to see what's happening.
Yep. It's not
okay,
a really real world use case. It's just the case where I, well, tested against another add-on API.
yeah, no, that's a good one. I'll put that since Kevin's volunteered, I will put
But
that
do
one.
you need to use the Node API headers? Are you using them in an experimental build in Node add-on API?
Well, I was tried to, but I removed the condition in the CI script because it's not going to work.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Currently,
It should,
currently the PR is only testing the stable API version, not experimental one. Yeah.
And then if we fix the stripping issue in Node API headers, would you then want to extend the testing with experimental, or is that out of scope?
Probably, but it cannot test against the existing Node API headers
Right.
versions because it's already
I
published.
see, because it's already published. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll look at the stripping script and hopefully we'll get some updates by next week.
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, great, thanks for doing that.
And then I also kind of wanted to go back to the fix PR.
Yep,
Because now we have the fix. What is the intended approach for releasing it? Because I believe Nick also had some ideas of, in NPM making the latest of the previous version or
I
something like
already did
that.
that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
then when we merge this fix, it'll just be the next minor version.
We can do next minor version because I already tagged the previous version as the latest one,
Yes.
and so
Okay.
that people probably won't install the 8.2.0 because it's not the latest
Okay.
in npm registry.
Right. So
right, and I
then,
don't think we're breaking anything. Like people who could compile before with 8.2 won't be able to, like that won't be broken in 8.3 anyway, will it? I mean, I don't think that's a big deal either way, but like I don't think that either if people were happy with 8.2 because their code wasn't using stuff, it would probably still be okay. And then
yeah, I mean, I guess that is true, but we definitely want to fix it so that when we publish this as I guess the latest 8.3, such that when somebody just says npm install node add-on API, they'll get this new
yeah,
8.3 that'll have the corrected feature, right? But
Yeah.
if people are happy right now with 8.20, then it's working fine. And then If it isn't, then they can remove it and reinstall, and then they would get the 810, which would be the latest until we release. That makes sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely a good idea. Yeah, so on that one, I guess like it's basically we want to review this PR, get it landed, and then do a release.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Especially please take a look how the included guard matrix, because I'm not pretty sure if I haven't take a very detailed look into the basic environment use case if the current will be sufficient. So it will be great if you can take if you can take a look as well. Because you can see that right now I just replace I just use the alias of the type, and I didn't especially about this operator that I added a operator because we have to add some operator to convert basic environment to the C type, but we don't have Node API, Node JS right now in some cases. So I just added the API env as a alternative. So I'd appreciate it if you can take a look onto the pull request. And yeah.
I have a couple questions. Like, so I see like it's only testing Unix and Linux environment. Do we want to test Windows as well? Like,
It's a we can definitely add that. It's just a question that if we want to is that really a good very different environment for testing mission types, or I mean we already have 40.
We got a lot of matrices, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of matrix, very large matrix of GitHub applications. So we can definitely add that because, but yeah, it really depends if we really want to add so many matrix.
okay, good point. I believe like we can hold on until we really see like
Yeah,
some
yeah.
Microsoft
If
specific failures,
you
MSVC specific failures. I
if
guess.
you think we should add it, please comment on the issue, and I'd be happy to add it.
And also, I want to ask, like, I've seen that this new operator, conversion operator, it's using the term node.js, and I believe last time we discussed, like, we would like really to use basic environment. So my question, like, if we want to change
Yeah,
this conversion operator instead of node.js environment to basic environment.
yeah. That's the question that I had when making the pull request, particularly for the operator type conversion, because the operator type conversion is specifically tied to the name of the type. We can't convert. Can we convert between type alias with the operator? I'm not pretty sure about that part. So we better need a test, a new test about it.
Well, you do
Node.js
want
is
to
alias.
keep it as the operator node API node JCenv because it like if you try to pass the C++ object of this basic env to one of the underlying Node API C functions, I think that's when it would need to be typecast. And if the C function is expecting a type specifically named Node API Node GCenv, that's why I thought we would need to keep that operator there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have a new type alias, which is Node API basically, and so, I mean, if we need to add a new operator for that type conversion.
So think of this basic. Oh, you have both of them, right? I don't think we need. Oh no, you don't have both. So technically, from the C++ point of view, if you have alias, is they treat exactly the same type. There is no kind of verification. Like if say you have, in our case, basic environment in Node.js environment is both aliases to the same type. So from the point of view of C++, they're exactly equivalent.
Well,
Even you have a
yeah,
function which accepts any of them, you can pass any other. Like so, it's all interchangeable. So think like
yeah, that would be great.
we do alias for integers, right? Like and technically to this function you can pass this integer itself, or you can pass alias for this integer. It's from point of C, C++, it's all equivalent.
Okay, so then the PR could just always define an operator to the node add-on API basic env and the node add-on API basic finalize, because those would then either be the correct NAPI end and NAPI finalize, or the node GC ones then.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
Because then that would remove the need for the if def inside this line 333 and whatnot. I mean, I
We
guess it
just
would,
need one. Yeah.
yeah, I guess it would be simple enough to test. But then my question is, since this PR does not test experimental mode, we're not going to get any of the experimental tests. So we would always just get the regular env, right?
Yeah. We
Okay,
are not testing experimental in this case.
right. And is it sufficient enough to have our current CI jobs that test for experimental?
Yeah.
I believe so as well, because experimental would normally be the latest. So you just do the latest that we have on our node version that's installing with Node.js. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, I have a question. Meanwhile, I posted the link. Please, can you please open the latest one? Just because like I actually have two questions about it. Just so we
Link,
can be clear. Yeah, in the chat, in the Zoom chat, the last one that I posted, the one that says even better link.
this one.
Yeah, I just wrote this on the fly. So this is in JS native API.h. Wait, that's not the latest link. I sent a third one that says even better
Okay.
link. Sorry, I should have said that.
Okay, I thought that's the one I got. This one.
Yeah, this one. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is what I was saying, right? Like if people have either opted out of they've turned on experimental, sure, but they have opted out of Node.js, right? Or they don't have experimental at all. Since the types are there, irrespective of whether experimental is on or not, the API should be there, is what I was saying, right? So that's one question I have is what do you think about making it available by way of a preprocessor macro? And my second question is, this is incorrect because Node API post finalizer is supposed to return an NAPI status. And I'm not sure that we can do that with a macro that executes a function immediately. The actual finalize that would normally be postponed, but isn't because that stuff is not defined. Like do we I don't know how wide the compiler support is for like functional expressions where you like call something and then you just semicolon the return value, and then that becomes the return value for the whole expression. Because like this is what I'm thinking we would have to do in order for Node API post finalizer to be available as like a thing, whether or not you're in experimental.
But we don't want it to be available if you're an experimental. So, Chandong, go ahead.
Well, the only question that I have with this method is that it will introduce a toggle problem about the timing of if the callback will be called synchronously or asynchronously. I think we should keep it asynchronously, or else the rest of the code will expect wrong timing of the callback. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, but I mean, do we make that? I mean, I guess, yeah, post finalizer is kind of guaranteed to be asynchronous, right? Uh, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
also kind of thinking a little bit on Michael's side here is that like the post finalizer is experimental and
Should just
I
not
don't think we
exist.
should have a non-experimental API thing
aliased.
alias.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that really makes sense
Yeah,
to me
okay.
The
because
whole idea
we
was
haven't done it
have
before for anything
Right,
either.
right. But the difference is in this case, we are changing the signature of existing APIs, right? Like we're redefining APIs as Node API, Node GCN, right? Which if you've opted out or if you're not in experimental at all, doesn't matter. Like you can transparently pass in an NAPI env and the compiler won't complain and the runtime won't complain, right?
Mhm.
But if you want to use the word Node API post finalizer in your code, yeah, then
Which
I guess you're
yeah,
right.
you would
You
never
shouldn't be
have
using that.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
Okay,
shouldn't be able to do that. And even like
okay.
you shouldn't necessarily be able to say no env either. Like no GC env, because
Right.
that
No,
should just
that's
shouldn't
right.
exist either, right? Like none
Right.
of
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
because you don't want people to be able to write code that then won't, if we deleted it because it never becomes non-experimental, we don't want people to be able to write code that stops working.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So people who haven't defined an API experimental won't have the word Node API, Node GCN in their code. And people who have defined an API experimental will have that word in their code, and it may or may not be an alias to an API env, depending on whether they've opted in or out. And if they haven't opted out, then they may have the word Node API post finalizer in their code, which in that case will be live and actually deferring finalizers and doing the work that it's supposed to be doing, right? So that's
Yeah,
the landscape.
that's what it's a very scenic route, but that is the landscape.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Yeah, okay, then we don't
Uh,
need this.
Okay, well, thanks for everybody for jumping into that and Chenzong for putting together the PR and everybody to look at it. And I guess the next step is just do the reviews and get to the point where we're comfortable landing it. But definitely great to see everybody jump in and get make progress on that quickly.
Well,
Anything else we should go ahead?
yeah, I just like to mention that the first item in the need change is confirmed that it's not API related issue, and
Okay.
there is a pending pull request for it, so we can remove it from the project.
Okay. So, and should we remove the Node API label, right?
Yeah, and we can also remove it from the project.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll remove that, and then I will do we just delete this?
There is a 3 dots.
Right.
Yeah, and delete from.
Delete from project. Okay. Perfect. Okay, yeah, and I think we need to go through the rest of the pre-add ones if we're finished with the other issue. Okay, so adding typing. I know we did discuss this last time. We made a comment. Okay. Right, so this one I think is just a comment that would like they use slightly different things, so we just need to take a look at. If anybody has any comments on that, but that seems reasonable that maybe if they're doing different things, it's not best. You can take a look. Goes through this. Okay, this one, I think we've sort of that, so they're all related. These are just bumping some things. And then this one,
Yeah, this is a very small change that I like to amend an outdated documentation because from the very specific first stable version of Node API, we already support multiple environments.
okay,
So I believe this just some leftovers from the very beginning.
okay, so it's just a comment change there. That's-
Yeah.
I can easily do that while I'm already here. Okay, and that might as well, okay. Backlog. We can put that one as the in progress, right?
Yeah, I'll start the CI or check on the failures. I'm not sure why it really fails in just a document change.
I guess this is interesting. I don't know if I should assign that to you, like in the node project, that basically, I think the guidance says don't land things for other people if it's assigned to them.
Yeah, no, man. The CI is failing. I think nobody can land it.
Okay, okay, takes us, I think, to the list of things in the triage. Anything else we should chat about this week? Well, if not, thanks to everybody for your time, and we'll see you in GitHub next time.
All
All
right.
right, talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Have a good day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you too.
everybody have a
Bye.
good weekend.